Good evening and welcome to Pjtn Online. I'm your host, Laurie Cardoza-Moore. I want to thank you all for joining us tonight. We've got a very exciting show as I take on my nemesis, the Southern Poverty Law Center. And I know my audience is probably very familiar with the SPLC. They try to pose themselves as a watchdog group for hate groups. And of course, they've targeted proclaiming justice to the nations as well as many other organizations. So we're going to talk about that tonight. I want to just welcome our return guests, but I also want to welcome our new guests who are with us tonight, just tuning in for the first time. If you're not familiar with proclaiming justice to the nations, our mission is to educate Christians about their biblical responsibility to stand with our Jewish brethren and defend the state of Israel against the rise of anti-Semitism. It's unfortunate that we live in a time when anti-Semitism is on the rise, not just in Europe as we've seen it historically, but also here in the United States. It's a disturbing trend, and of course, we as Christians are not going to be silent like we were in Germany when Hitler came to power, and we are going to fight against those leaders that instill this hatred and continue to perpetuate these age-old threats toward our Jewish brethren. So we're glad to have you. The way we accomplish our mission is we produce award-winning documentary films, television shows, programs like this one, Pjtn Online, every week to help educate and inform you and to mobilize you to action. Our programs broadcast through 21 global media partners, and we are reaching 2.6 billion viewers every week with our Focus on Israel show. So if you're not familiar with Focus on Israel, we're going to talk a little bit about that program and how you can watch it so you can be more informed as you seek to look for the answers, the biblical truth, not the theological or the doctrinal, what somebody's theology is or doctrine or what a denomination's theology is. We're going back to the Bible. And so we always focus on the text of Scripture to authenticate our position, not someone's theology or someone's doctrine. So as I said, we reached 2.6 billion viewers, and I also want to encourage you tonight, for those of our longtime viewers, if you are not a Pjtn Watchman yet, I want to invite you to go to pjtn.org/donate and become a partner for just $20 a month. For those of you that are new to the organization or new to the program, we want to invite you also to consider becoming a Pjtn Watchman. What is the role of the Watchman? Well, the Watchman's duty or responsibility is to stand in the ramparts of the city and watch for an enemy who advances. And we know that in Ezekiel chapter 33, verses 1 through 7, we know that the watchman, God calls the watchman to warn the inhabitants of the city when he brings an army against a city. And if the watchman fails to warn the inhabitants and the inhabitants die, then the blood that is spilled is going to be required of that watchman. However, if the watchman does warn the inhabitants and they refuse to take heed, then if any innocent blood is spilled, it will be required of those individuals, not the watchman. And so we are living at a time when we have access to so much information that we can certainly be paying attention as watchmen in our communities, in our cities, in our nation, and even around the world. It's our responsibility as Christians to stand with our Jewish brethren. As a watchman, when you sign up, you commit to not only partner with us prayerfully, because what we do requires prayer around the globe 24/7. And we are so grateful to have an international prayer team that prays every week for this mission, for our supporters, people who just send us emails because they have needs. We are here to pray for you. And we are here to also be as a watchman to you in your community. So not only do we ask you to prayerfully support Pjtn as a watchman, but also financially. For just $20 a month, you can help us. Our goal this year is to sign up 5,000 new Pjtn watchmen. So we hope that you will sign up and join us tonight as well. I also just want to remind you that your monthly donation helps ensure that programs like this one or our Focus on Israel show, our award-winning show that airs on Daystar and God TV, and our 19 other media partners around the world, you're able to ensure that these programs continue and that we're able to reach more Christians around the world with this message. I also just want to remind you that with that $20 donation, all it requires, we're going to send you with that donation a packet, a new member packet, a Watchman packet that you'll get to share with your family and friends as well. But it also enables you to get more information, sign up to get our newsletters so that you can stay informed and you can share the information that you learn here on PJTN Online with your family and friends. Now I just want to mention that we are going to talk about PJTN in the headlines this week. We sent out an email earlier this week about the Southern Poverty Law Center, who considers PJTN a threat. And many of you, as I said earlier, may be familiar with the Southern Poverty Law Center. We are now fully recognized by the infamous Radical Far Left Protective Center on their 2018 list of most dangerous hate groups in operation in America. Of course, PJTN has been defined as a Tennessee-based anti-Muslim hate group exhibiting extreme hostility against Muslims. However, they didn't update their organization's website to let people know that I actually have been invited at the United Nations, as I serve as a special envoy at the United Nations for the World Council of Independent Christian Churches, and I have been invited over the years to speak on 2 panels with Muslim women who came to the United Nations asking their sisters in the West to help them obtain their freedoms, because their freedoms are violated in their countries. They are persecuted, they are beaten by their husbands, they have no rights. If a woman is raped, it takes 4 witnesses to testify that she actually has been raped. It is outrageous how Muslim women are treated in other nations. Unfortunately, the Southern Poverty Law Center kind of left that information out about yours truly, Laurie Cardozo-Moore. So it's unfortunate they haven't updated their records as of earlier today. I checked, I'm still on the list. So I also want to mention that Southern Poverty Law Center declared groups like the KKK and neo-Nazis hate groups, which, you know, we agree that they are hate groups, but to have proclaiming justice to the nations in the same category, not so, I don't think so. Obviously, we have struck a nerve with the ultimate anti-hate watch group that in reality is itself a hate group that foments hatred of conservative, pro-Christian, pro-Jewish, pro-American, and pro-Israel values. The Southern Poverty Law Center promotes hatred with a fervor that has proven to turn violent, as witnessed by the 2010 gunman who invaded the headquarters of the Family Research Council with the intent to kill as many people as possible. He was a fan of the Southern Poverty Law Center. He later told the FBI his target list was picked online at the SPLC website. So, you know, this is when Southern Poverty Law Center does this, they make people like myself and others targets for attack. But this is part of their strategy. In fact, Dennis Prager, who serves as a PJTN advisory board member, and his organization has also been targeted. Some of you may be familiar with PragerU. He was singled out as a hate group. His organization was. And I want you to take a look at the recent video that PragerU produced on the Southern Poverty Law Center. It'll be quite enlightening.
Shutting down people you don't agree with is about as un-American as you can get. Rigorous debate, honest discussion, open exchange of ideas, that's the American way. But free thinking and speech are threatened today by a group with a sweet-sounding name that conceals a nefarious purpose. This group is called the Southern Poverty Law Center, or SPLC. Originally founded as a civil rights law firm in 1971, the SPLC reinvented itself in the mid-'80s as a political attack group. Every year now, it produces a new list of people and charities it claims are extremists and haters. Aided by glowing coverage from the establishment media, the SPLC's hate list has become a weapon for taking individuals and groups they disagree with and tarring them with ugly associations. The SPLC employs a two-pronged strategy. First, find a handful of crazies with barely any followers, no address, and no staff, and blow them up into a dangerous movement. Proof that there are neo-Nazis lurking everywhere. On their notorious hate map, the SPLC lists 917 separate hate groups in the U.S. No one has even heard of more than a handful of them. The second strategy of the SPLC is to undermine legitimate political voices that they oppose by associating them with extremists like the KKK. Take the charity known as the Alliance Defending Freedom. The SPLC lists them as a hate group. Is that fair? Well, the ADF has a network of 3,000 attorneys from all across the U.S. who've donated more than 1 million volunteer hours in defense of religious liberty. They've had a role in 49 victories at the U.S. Supreme Court. Putting the Alliance Defending Freedom on a list with 130 Ku Klux Klan chapters is not only wrong, it's malicious. According to the SPLC, one of the most influential social scientists in the U.S., Charles Murray, is a, quote, white nationalist. Ayaan Hirsi Ali, perhaps the most eloquent spokesperson for the rights of Muslim women, is to the SPLC a toxic anti-Muslim extremist. Scores of other individuals and charities active in mainstream conservative or religious causes have likewise been branded by the Southern Poverty Law Center as threats to society. Mind you, it is entirely fair to disagree with any of those folks, but it is utterly unfair to call them haters or extremists. The largest category listed by the SPLC as extremists, with 623 entries, covers groups like the Tea Party organizations that are wary of centralized government. Last time we checked, favoring smaller government was a mainstream and perfectly honorable American tradition. What is not honorable is the course prescribed by a leader of the SPLC, Mark Potok, who was caught on video proclaiming the organization's true intentions. He told a group of supporters, quote, "The press will describe us as monitoring hate groups. I want to say plainly that our aim in life is to destroy these groups, to completely destroy them. Portraying someone with political views different from your own as a public menace is bullying, and it's a dangerous game. Instead of reducing hate and violence, the SPLC's name-calling directly incites it. In March 2017, Charles Murray was trying to discuss his acclaimed book, Coming Apart, at Middlebury College, when he was violently attacked by protesters inflamed by the SPLC's labeling of him as a racist. A professor escorting Murray ended up in the hospital. In 2012, a gunman attempted mass murder at the Family Research Council and failed only because the first man he shot managed to disarm him. The attacker told the police he acted because the SPLC had listed the Family Research Council as a hate group. It's a vicious irony. While promoting itself as a monitor of hate groups, the SPLC has in practice become a fomentor of hate. Yet the group rolls on, bigger than ever. What keeps them going? For one thing, the establishment media constantly quote them. Scare stories about right-wing stormtroopers are a sure way to attract eyeballs and fit nicely with the media's own preconceptions of the dangerous reactionaries lurking out there in Middle America. Second, alarmism is a great fundraising technique. Convincing people there are fascists everywhere has turned the SPLC into a cash machine. Last year, the group hustled $50 million out of frightened liberal donors, adding to the $368 million of assets they were already sitting on. So, the next time you see the Southern Poverty Law Center quoted in the news, just remember, the masterminds behind the SPLC aren't eliminating hate, they are fueling it. I'm Carl Zinsmeister for Prager University. Thank you for watching this video. To help keep PragerU's videos free, please consider making a tax-deductible donation.
So as you can see, organizations like Proclaiming Justice to the Nations and PragerU are being targeted for one reason and one reason only: our voice in support of Israel against the influence of anti-Semitic, anti-American, anti-Judeo-Christian, and the unconstitutional pro-Islamic content in American textbooks, and against the rise of anti-Semitism on America's college campuses. Our voice is being heard, ladies and gentlemen, and it's because of your prayers and your financial support. PJTN is making a difference. We pose a threat because our values have been made vocal and our numbers are growing. We will not remain silent. Last year alone, get this, the Southern Poverty Law Center raised support donations in excess of $50 million to add to the $368 million already stockpiled to smear and attempt to shut down organizations like PJTN. These donations came from primarily far-left interests who want to silence voices like mine and yours. A voice that stands in support of Judeo-Christian values, rights, and causes. We are on the front lines at PJTN, and it comes with a cost. SPLC must not be successful in silencing us, ladies and gentlemen. I am personally asking you to please help us to fight back. Your financial support is vital to confront the enemies of our values who are massively funded and determined to defeat us. We're going to watch a short video about another way that you can support PJTN. This month marks the 70th anniversary of the historic Declaration of the State of Israel. God's sovereign hand can be seen all over this land. Included in the celebrations is the opening of the American Embassy right here in Jerusalem. In honor of this celebration, PJTN is offering a special 70th anniversary package, which includes a captivating new book and an award-winning DVD. Israel Rising is a unique visual story of Israel's miraculous journey from unforgiving desert to thriving nation. Thousands of years ago, the prophet Ezekiel foretold a future time in which the arid land of Israel would come alive for its people. Now this breathtaking book documents the fulfillment of this vision, as rarely seen photographs from the 1880s to the 1940s are juxtaposed with recent photos of the same locations. This book will inspire and captivate you as it illuminates Israel's foretold awakening in a new and unforgettable way. In addition, you'll receive the award-winning documentary, Israel Indivisible, The Case for the Ancient Homeland. This inspiring film examines the many political twists and turns that make Israel the world's most controversial nation. From Abraham and the Promise to the issues facing the Jewish state today, the film examines the historical, archaeological, legal, and biblical foundations for the modern state of Israel. This is a limited time offer for these two remarkable resources for just a one-time gift of $70 today. Your generous donation will help ensure that PJTN stays on the front lines and in the headlines of all the important issues facing Israel and our Jewish brethren. So please go to pjtn.org today. Welcome back. This is the segment of our program each week where we discuss the rise of anti-Semitism and continue our Bible study about our responsibility as Christians to stand with our Jewish brethren in Israel against this age-old hatred. Last week, we discussed going back to the origin of the word through a Hebraic perspective in order to put the text of Scripture in its proper context. We discussed the growing movement globally to revise history with the ultimate goal to deny Israel's right to her ancient homeland. And finally, we discussed as Christians that we must be grounded in the truth of God's Word, upholding a biblical worldview, not a theological or doctrinal perspective, so that we will not be led astray through false prophets. So let's take a look at our biblical responsibility in light of today's topic. There's a wonderful scripture in the book of Psalms, chapter 37, verses 3 through 7. And it says, "Trust in the Lord and do good. Dwell in the land and feed on his faithfulness. Delight yourself also in the Lord, and he shall give you the desires of your heart. Commit your way to the Lord. Trust also in him, and he shall bring it to pass. He shall bring forth your righteousness as the light, and your justice as the noonday. Rest in the Lord and wait patiently for him. Do not fret because of him who prospers in his way, because of the man who brings wicked schemes to pass. Ladies and gentlemen, this scripture has been a long time source of encouragement for me, especially being involved in the issue of defending Israel, and even years ago when I was involved in the pro-life cause. You know, lobbying for issues in the state legislature like pro-Israel causes can also be quite controversial, unfortunately. And even in a place like Tennessee, where we are in the belt buckle of the Bible Belt, Tennessee, when we tried to pass our first resolution to support the state of Israel, unfortunately, we were met with resistance from Christians, because these Christians have been raised believing that God was done with Israel. They believed in replacement theology. They believed in supersessionism, where God's commitment was to the church now, not to the Jewish people, not to Israel. And unfortunately, this age-old hatred, this age-old teaching has fueled anti-Semitism and anti-Semitic attacks against our Jewish brethren throughout Christian history. So it is our goal that we study the Word and we read the Word, and this scripture I wanted to share with you today, because we can't be overwhelmed by men who, or leaders who are espousing a falsehood. And we must be encouraged in this battle that we have set ourselves on, this path that we've set ourselves on. We must be encouraged to know that God is, as he says in his word, is going to make our righteousness shine like the dawn, the justice of our cause like the noonday sun. So we are to be still, waiting patiently for him, but being obedient to what we are called to do in this hour at this time. With the rise of global anti-Semitism that is being fueled by the lies in the Middle East against Israel, accusing Israel of being occupiers in their God-given land, we must sound the shofar of truth. As believers, as watchmen on the wall for Israel, we must proclaim justice and warn the inhabitants of the land, just like we talked about the watchman earlier in Ezekiel. When we see the enemy advancing, we must warn the people, and that's what we're trying to do here at PJTN. We're trying to warn Christians around the world that there is a rise of anti-Semitism that is happening again in our generation. And as I said earlier, in Germany, Germany at the time was a Judeo-Christian nation. It was the nation that gave rise to the birth of the Reformation movement. But the majority of Germans, especially German Christians, stood by and allowed not just 6 million Jews to be led to slaughter, but also another 5.5 million other people. My question to the church is, where were you? Why wasn't the church? Why didn't the church stand up? Why didn't they object to this? Why would they support a leader like Adolf Hitler? These are all important questions. In Genesis 12:3, we're told, God told Abraham, I will bless those who bless you, and he who ignores you, I will utterly destroy. That is the Hebraic understanding, the Hebraic interpretation of Genesis 12:3. If God is going to utterly destroy someone because they ignored, because they didn't even pay attention to Israel, to the plight of our Jewish brethren, we will stand before him one day, and we will have to give an account. It is why our mission at PJTN is for such a time as this. In past generations, during the time of the Holocaust, for example, there were people like Martin Niemöller, Dietrich Bonhoeffer, Corrie ten Boom, just to name a few, Father Bruno, who spoke up, who tried to defend and protect the Jewish people from this massive slaughter. But unfortunately, there weren't enough. And we can't, looking back in history, learning from history, we cannot sit by and allow our Jewish brethren, when the enemy is advancing, allowing them to be attacked. We have to speak up. God has given us the voice. He's put us on the earth at this time. He's even caused you to tune into this program and be a part of proclaiming justice to the nations. And that's why I want to encourage you, become a watchman. Join us. Stand with us on the front lines of this battle. You will be so glad that you did. We can't, I can't be everywhere around the world, but I can help you wherever you are on this planet to stand against anti-Semitism in your own community. In Deuteronomy chapter 32, verse 6, we're also told to remember the days of yore, understand the years of each generation. We are commanded by God to study history. And unfortunately, with regards to Christianity, most Christians do not know the history of Christianity. They don't know the founding. They know what the apostles and the disciples wrote about in the New Testament, but they really don't go back and they don't study how Christianity evolved. Because really, the first Gentile converts, the first Gentile believers, if you will, in Acts chapter 15, were not sitting in churches on Sunday morning studying a New Testament Bible. No, they absolutely were not. They were in the synagogue on Shabbat, on Saturday, studying the Torah of Moses. And you can read that whole chapter in Acts 15 and see the storyline there. So how did the church lose its way from Acts 15 to now we have 33,000 denominations, and replacement theology and supersessionism is making a comeback. Anti-Semitism against Jews in Christianity is making a comeback. We are commanded, and that's why it's so important that we study history. It's been said, yesterday is history, tomorrow is mystery, today is a gift, and that's why it's called present. And we can't control the past, and we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. However, we only have today, and each of us are only assured today, and therefore must live with wisdom and clear direction. In the words of my dear friend, Rabbi Shlomo Riskin, he said, quote, "We cannot treat today with proper circumspection unless we are sensitive to the forces of history which preceded it." And that is so true, and what incredible wisdom that he shares with us. Because if we don't study history, even as individuals, if we take it on a personal level, if we don't understand the history of where we came from, then how can we know our destiny and what our future should hold or the direction we should go? The same is true about a nation. If we don't study history in the United States of America, then we'll lose our way, because the history teaches us about our founding fathers, about their vision for this constitutional republic. And it also reinforces in us the incredible responsibility for us, for our generation, to preserve this constitutional republic, that we might preserve it to give it to the next generation coming up. And so true is the Bible. If we do not study the history in the Bible as God's plan, I've always said that the Bible is a book written to Israel, for Israel, about Israel. And if you look at the whole of the Bible, from Genesis even to the book of Revelations, the story with Israel starts in Genesis chapter 12, and it goes all the way through to the end. That is the history of the nation of Israel. And most Christians are not taught from that perspective. Rabbi Riskin also went on to say, every generation, a divine voice calls out the particular summons, challenge, or opportunity of the generation. That is why Pjtn has been committed to expose the anti-Semitic, anti-American, anti-Judeo-Christian, unconstitutional, pro-Islamic content in America's textbooks. This is the call of this generation. We are not teaching our children a proper perspective of history, but we know biblically we are supposed to, especially as Christians, especially in the church. I want to close our time of study with Joel chapter 1, verse 3. And in the book of Joel, the verse says, "Tell your children about it. Let your children tell their children, and their children another generation, One of the things we have sorely lacked in the church is we have not taught our children an accurate biblical history. And really, a lot of it was not even our fault. Although we did choose to sit under pastors who were teaching us, and we didn't know what we were missing. There are many pastors who do not realize what they're missing either, because these pastors go to seminaries. And in the seminaries, they teach theology, or they teach doctrine of the particular denomination or faith group. But they don't teach from a Hebraic perspective. And if we don't go back to the Bible, understanding that the Bible was written to Hebrews, and that we need to interpret those scriptures from a Hebraic perspective to understand what they were saying, to understand the culture and the context to which they were speaking. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to take your questions. So if you have any questions or any comments you want to share, please feel free to do so. We're going to address this issue some more on the other end of this break. Stay with us. From studying history, it's very clear that what starts with the Jews never ends only with the Jews. We must strongly stand against any anti-Semitic trends, for if not stopped, they'll cause harm to all of us, and we'll witness the downfall of our Judeo-Christian Western culture. Today, many people say there's no longer a need for a Jewish state, that Jews around the world no longer need a place of refuge. But anyone who has heard recent statistics about the worldwide rise in anti-Semitism would never make such a claim. The reality is that neo-Nazi groups and Nazi sympathizers are increasing around the world. Surveys show that over 1 billion people in the world harbor anti-Semitic attitudes. Close to 50% believe that Jews have too much power in the business world, and 2/3 of the world's population has never heard of the Holocaust, or believe the historic accounts of it are inaccurate. If there's one thing history has taught the Jewish people, a place they can go in time of need is essential, and Israel fulfills that role. But the need for a Jewish state is not limited to being only a refuge for Jews. Jewish tradition in Israel grants full rights for women and people of all races, faiths, and gender. This tradition is what often makes Israel among the first countries to send doctors and field hospitals to any place where a natural disaster occurs, utilizing their medical advances to save lives worldwide. Muslims, Christians, and people of every faith, or those of no faith, have the freedom to worship or not worship as they choose. For Muslims, the Jewish state goes out of its way to provide this freedom. For example, every Israeli university gives students the option of deferring their exams during the month of Ramadan. The Knesset calls off all sessions at sunset during Ramadan to ensure that Muslim Knesset members can break their fasts with the traditional iftar dinner. In an open and democratic manner, opportunities for education, advancement, and careers exist for all citizens in the Jewish state. Sadly, such rights and opportunities do not exist in any of the Muslim Arab states. For example, in neighboring Jordan, Jews cannot become citizens. And in Saudi Arabia, no non-Muslim can become a citizen. Saying that Israel must cease to exist as a Jewish state while accepting that other countries define themselves as Muslim is pure hypocrisy. In most of these countries, no rights exist for non-Muslims, women, and the LGBT community. Don't let yourself be manipulated by evil people with a wicked agenda. When the self-serving villains are in control, good people from all religions suffer. Muslims, Christians, and all people of conscience should stand proudly and show respect for a country that gives so much to the world in so many ways. Do your part, do your research, and do what you can to make a difference. Because what happens in Israel does affect us all. This is not just a Jewish or just an Israeli problem. This is a problem for all humanity, for each and every one of us who believe in freedom and human rights. Learn more about what you can do at pjtn.org. Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed that short clip. I want to start this next segment. We're going to take some questions and comments in just a little bit, but I want to share with you a recent analysis by the Family Research Council on an important topic here at PJTN, Proclaiming Justice to the Nations. One of our initiatives is exposing the anti-BDS, the groups on college campuses that are promoting the whole anti-Semitic, anti-BDS campaign, which happens to be the Students for Justice in Palestine and the Muslim Student Association. But recently, here in Nashville, some of you who follow the news, especially with regards to Southern Poverty Law Center, the Jewish community had invited the co-founder, Levin, to come and speak to their community about the hate groups since Donald Trump became president. And during the whole program, Mr. Levin continued to bash Donald Trump and accuse him of igniting the KKK and the neo-Nazis and them coming out of the woodwork. And of course, he also chose to bash organizations like PJTN, as we talked about in the opening segment of our program. Well, it was interesting because at the end, during the Q&A session, Mr. Levin was asked why Proclaiming Justice to the Nations was on the list, and he had a list of organizations, PJTN being one, where he brought it with him to discuss some of the things that I said, and some of the things he actually said that I said were inaccurate, taken out of context to try to justify putting me in a hate group category. But there was because we're focused on the groups that are leading anti-Semitism, Mr. Levin also mentioned during his statement that Southern Poverty Law Center was also following the anti-Semitic incidents on college campuses. But when he was asked during the question and answer session of the meeting if Southern Poverty Law Center was investigating the Students for Justice in Palestine group, or also known as SJP. And he said, "Oh, I'm not familiar with that group." I find that the height of hypocrisy, ladies and gentlemen. If anybody is studying who is fueling the anti-Semitism on college campuses, it is the Students for Justice in Palestine and the Muslim Student Association, two groups with ties to CARE and the Muslim Brotherhood. How do they get away with this? I don't know. But Mr. Levin seems to be clueless, or the Southern Poverty Law Center, for that matter, seems to be clueless about where the real threat is coming from on college campuses. But I want to read to you an analysis that was put together by the Family Research Council on the greatest campus threat, which is being ignored by the Southern Poverty Law Center. They state that the foremost group solely focused on tracking anti-Semitism at American institutions of higher learning states that there were over 1,700 anti-Semitic incidents that have occurred in the past 3 years between 2015 and 2017. But outside large segments of the Jewish community, this grim reality appears to be virtually unknown. Within that community, however, an authoritative observer testified before Congress late last year that in the past several years, Jewish students on certain college campuses, not all, but a large number, have been subjected to an unprecedented level of anti-Jewish sentiment, leading many to feel uncomfortable participating in Jewish campus life or other campus activities whose participants are especially hostile to Jewish students. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't have to tell you that just creating this environment where Jewish students do not feel safe on college campuses actually violates these Jewish students' civil rights. But where is the lawsuit? Where is the outcry from these administrations on college campuses because they wanted to protect free speech? Well, free speech is obviously more important than whether somebody's civil rights are violated. And after all, it's just the Jews, so why should we care? This analysis goes on to state that most Americans would be mortified to learn that the colleges and universities to which they pay a king's ransom have become safe havens for an increasingly noticeable anti-Semitism that has produced an environment of bullying, intimidation, and fear for Jewish students and academics. This newly minted anti-Semitism has entwined itself into the fabric of many educational institutions via a predominant multicultural ideology that pronounces Israel to be its enemy. To add insult to injury for American liberals, many watchdog groups of the civil rights era, most notably the Southern Poverty Law Center, have turned a blind eye to this emerging Jew hatred that fashionably casts itself as a critique of the creation of the State of Israel as just another instance of Western imperialism. Accordingly, Israel is derided as a white, colonialist, oppressor state that has imposed its apartheid regime in Palestine to suppress the predecessor Arab populations residing there. Ladies and gentlemen, these people have provided no proof to substantiate these positions because there is no proof to substantiate it. All it is fake news. It's false accusations and lies. It's disinformation against the State of Israel. Over the past year, the Southern Poverty Law Center has focused a great deal of time and energy describing an alt-right threat to the peace and security of American college campuses. It is true that there have been extremist right-wing incursions into the nation's campuses that deserve our attention, but these events are largely sporadic and typically perpetrated by individuals and small groups who never accepted by the academic environment they invade. Such ideological raids are not openly sanctioned by those within the targeted academic communities. In recent decades, public universities and colleges have not allowed their faculty to inculcate students with the teachings of neo-Nazis or white supremacists. On the other hand, the Southern Poverty Law Center has ignored the greatest modern on-campus threat to a specific minority group's rights and safety, the aforementioned threat to American Jews. This threat is a natural consequence of the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement, as we spoke about earlier, which targets the State of Israel regarding its ongoing conflict with the Palestinian Arabs. Of course, they don't want to talk about how the Arabs are lobbing missiles. In fact, last night, I think there were another 12 missiles that were lobbed into Israel again from Gaza. And of course, remember, in 2005, Israel pulled their communities, their Jewish communities, out of Gaza in a good faith effort to show the Arabs, look, we'll pull out, you can have Gaza, and we'll give you this whole little territory. Let's start here. And what have they done? The Gaza has become a launch pad for missile attacks against Israeli civilians. This is outrageous. There's generally no enlightened debate over the Arab-Israeli conflict and the drawing of borders within Israel to implement a two-state solution on American campuses. Instead, the debate driven by the BDS movement and its directors have devolved into a full-bore attack on Israel's existence, Zionism, and on Jews themselves. And ladies and gentlemen, we have seen this. In fact, here in Tennessee, back in 2015, we introduced a anti-BDS resolution to raise awareness about this threat on our college campuses because we were seeing anti-Semitic incidents occurring on our flagship university and other universities, UT Knoxville, and other universities across the state. But when we spoke to our state legislators and we spoke to citizens, tax-paying citizens who are paying for these universities, they had no clue what BDS was or that it was going on, or that it was in violation, that the activity going on these college campuses violated the civil rights of the Jewish students on campus. It's very disturbing. And these kids, these Jewish students, as I just read, do not feel safe in this environment. Americans would be shocked to discover that public anti-Semitism is resurgent in the United States, with the majority of this resurgence happening at the universities and colleges funded, as I said, by their tax dollars. Consider the observations made by Dr. Alvin Rosenfeld, renowned Holocaust scholar from Indiana University in Bloomington, who spoke to the Allgemeiner in March of 2016. And he said, "Anti-Semitism has become a serious threat once again," saying that he had thought that after the demise of the Nazis and knowledge of the destruction they wrought, serious public Jew hatred was unlikely to surface again in the West in any major way. I was wrong. Anti-Semitism is on the rise again, and the situation on campuses seems especially acute. We cannot hope to stop it or overturn it immediately, but our goal is to open more eyes toward what is happening, to get more people to start paying attention to contemporary anti-Semitism and the role that hostility to Israel plays in generating it. And ladies and gentlemen, I will tell you, the statement by this gentleman, who is a scholar in Holocaust studies, is absolutely spot on, because this movement is growing across the country. And unfortunately, you know, if we look back in history and we look at the rise of Hitler, how he came to power, really before Hitler even came to power, the professors in the universities in Germany were already targeting the Jews and teaching up-and-coming leaders and students going through the university that the Jews were subhuman, that they, for example, you know, a lot of the medical experiments that we know were conducted, evil experiments that were conducted on Jews by Mengele. He didn't believe that Jews had the same pain threshold. He thought that they were different than Germans, than Aryans. And it was that mindset and that mentality that was transferred to the next generation. So Hitler didn't just happen in a vacuum. It was being prepared. And we see a lot of this hatred, where in Germany, it was professors teaching against Jews as individuals. Today, in the professors in our universities, not just in Germany and throughout Europe, but now even in the United States, are teaching the same old hatred, but now it's making Israel, the nation of Israel, the target, making Israel the Jew among the nations as their target. And unfortunately, this is becoming more and more pervasive as this report continues on. It says, at a recent event recognizing Religious Freedom Day at Family Research Council's headquarters, human rights advocate and former Congressman Frank Wolf reiterated Kurtz's concerns when he spoke about the growing tide of anti-Semitism. Quote, "Have you seen the anti-Semitism happening around the world? There's anti-Semitism on American college campuses. This whole boycott, divestiture, and sanctions BDS movement is soft anti-Semitism. I have not seen any religious leaders speak out against this." You know, this is interesting that Representative Wolf shared this comment at the Religious Freedom Day for the Family Research Council, because I interviewed Representative Wolf when he was still a congressman. And it was interesting because, you know, usually when you go in and you meet a congressman, they shake your hand, there's niceties exchanged. This man came right, made a beeline for me, and he looked me straight in the eye and asked me, because he knew that I've been involved with the World Council of Independent Christian Churches, and he asked me point blank, "Where are your pastors?" And I was kind of stunned, and he repeated himself again. He said, "Where are your pastors?" He said, "I am looking for leaders to stand up." And unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, the pastors are missing in action on this issue. Here is a man who is a congressman who spent many years of his life trying to protect our religious freedoms. And here he was trying to defend and protect the rights of Jewish students on college campuses, our Jewish communities. and the Christian church is silent. It's missing in action. It's unfortunate, ladies and gentlemen, and that's why it's important and incumbent upon us as Christians. It is our biblical responsibility. As PJTN Watchmen, we are to warn the inhabitants of the city. We are to warn our pastors. We are to warn the congregation that we're involved in. We are to warn our communities because we have the information. We know the truth. And to whom much is given, much will be required. The article went on to say that this new anti-Semitism is related to the general suppression of free speech and religious expression on campuses. But it also targets Jewish members of the academic community because Israel is now an enemy of the political left, as discussed below. Freedom of religion, freedom of speech, and the right to peaceful assembly on campus have all been increasingly threatened in recent years as colleges and universities have closed their minds to points of view that deviate from any real debate on this issue. And it is unfortunate because these supposed leaders who say that they are, these leftists who say that they are protecting free speech and demanding freedom of speech, they're missing in action when it comes to the rights of the Jewish students on campuses. Political conservatives see this discrimination clearly, as Stanley Kurtz, senior fellow at the Ethics and Public Policy Center, noted in September of 2017, where he said, less than a month into the school year, it's evident that the campus free speech crisis is still with us. Shoutdowns are back, aggravated by troubling developments at some of last year's hardest hit campuses. There are also signs of a general escalation in addition to outside speakers. Targets of attack now include disfavored professors, administrators, courses, and students. Campus-wide disruptions, for example, Evergreen State College style, have become a real possibility. Kurtz predicted an ever-escalating lack of control on campus unless educators and legislators tackle the need to discipline speaker shoutdowns, classroom invasions, building takeovers. Later developments would support his predictions. And ladies and gentlemen, as we are coming to a close on our program, I just want to reiterate again, when we launched the anti-BDS resolution campaign here in Tennessee, we passed the resolution. We launched a media campaign that went global to share with people, citizens around the world and across the United States about this resolution to confront this issue. We had people from 47 states contact us wanting to introduce the resolution. 10 states have passed. 4 states are in the process of introducing the legislation. Ohio is getting ready to come into the Senate for a vote. Texas has got the legislation. Colorado will be introducing the legislation, and of course North Carolina. But these were watchmen. These were people who saw the enemy advancing. They saw the opportunity to get involved, and that's what we're here for. You don't have to be, a professional lobbyist. All you have to be is a citizen who cares about the direction of our country, who wants to stand up and defend our Jewish brethren and the state of Israel. So I want to just take a couple minutes to see if we have any comments from our viewers or any questions. And I just want to encourage you all to watch our Focus on Israel show. We're going to talk about that because a lot of the comments and questions I get every week are from people who have been watching that show. More and more Christians are starting to learn. And we've got Monique Crandon. She says, Lori, I saw an article a few weeks ago about a neighborhood in Israel that was discriminating against Arabs moving there. The neighborhood wants to keep it mainly Jewish, but the Arabs that want to move there claim to be peaceful, saying not all Arabs are evil. What do you think about it? Monique, I'm not actually familiar with that situation. I haven't read anything, and I follow everything that is going on. But I will tell you that there's the Israeli-controlled areas, and then there is the Palestinian authority-controlled areas. For example, Bethlehem, I always use the analogy of the tale of two cities. We covered this in our documentary, Boycott This. But in the town of Bethlehem, Bethlehem is governed by the Palestinian Authority. And you have Christians. We used to have many Christians who lived in Bethlehem. Over 80% of the Christians have fled Bethlehem because of the persecution by the Arabs. Now, in Nazareth, which is governed by the Israeli government, this is a community, Monique, much like what you're asking about. You have Jews, Christians, and Muslims who all live together. And they have no problem getting along. They all worship, the way they want to worship. They go about their lives. They go to work. They go to school. And they don't have this conflict. So I'm not familiar with it. And I don't know if you know the city that you're referencing. We just have to be very careful about the information that, we receive out of the Middle East. Even when we think it's coming from a reliable source, we have Christian organizations that are putting out propaganda, unfortunately, like the Sabeel Foundation, who is tied to Bethlehem Bible College. So it's very important that we get all of the information. I don't know where that source, where you got it, Monique, but maybe if you can share it on Facebook with us, and we can have a dialogue afterwards. But I appreciate Betty Lou. I see your smiling face. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. And I just want to close by reminding everybody, if you have any prayer requests, prayer needs, you have any comments that you want to make, or questions that you have to ask, you can always just come back later on during the week, and I'd be happy to answer those questions next week if you tune into the next program. But I also want to encourage you, again, to visit pjtn.org. Sign up to get on our mailing list. Like us on Facebook. We're already here tonight if you haven't done it already. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram. Remember, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel at pjtn.org/TV. And also take a look at our website, our events pages. We've got upcoming events that are coming up in Florida. You can go to the events page on our website to see where I'm going to be speaking, and we would love to see you. I know that many of you are probably asking, with all the information that I've shared with you tonight, what can you do? I want to encourage you that you can start by becoming informed by visiting pjtn.org. There's a lot of great information on that website, but also on our social media. Follow us, like I said, on Twitter and on Instagram, and also on Facebook, because we post articles throughout the week to help inform you so that you can share that information with your family and friends. I also sign up to become a PJTN Watchman. As I mentioned earlier, it's critically important that we have the financial resources. For just $20 a month, you can help us keep this program and all of our media, all of our programs on the air. Remember, our goal for 2018 is to sign up 5,000 new PJTN Watchmen. So if you're tuned in tonight and you aren't a Watchman, I ask you to please prayerfully consider becoming a partner with us by financially supporting us, praying with us, and then being a watchman in your community, looking for anti-Semitic incidents, and then contacting us, and let us help you to defend your Jewish community and your community. You can share our website with your family and friends. And of course, tell your family and friends about this program, and enjoy it, and encourage them to tune in every Wednesday evening at 6 p.m. If you want to learn more throughout the week, you can also tune into our award-winning program, Focus on Israel, on Daystar TV, each Saturday evening, 5:30 p.m. Central, 3:30 Pacific Time. On Sunday nights, our Focus on Israel show airs at 11 p.m. Central and 9 p.m. Pacific Time. Or you can go to God TV on Wednesdays at 2:30 p.m. Eastern and 11:30 Pacific time, 11:30 a.m. Check your local listings for all of our other media partners. And as I said again, the events page, we've got 4 major events going on in Florida next month. We'd love to come to your community. If you want to schedule something, again, comments at pjtn.org. Email us and let us know what city you're in, and we would love to arrange something. If you'd like to maybe have me come and speak to your synagogue, your church, or your campus, again, comments at pjtn.org. Email us with all the information. I also, in closing, just want to continue to ask you to keep Israel in your prayers. As I mentioned earlier, they are still under missile attack by Gaza, by the terrorists in Gaza. So please keep these families in your prayer. It is not easy living on the border with Gaza. Send us your prayer requests and your comments again. And in closing, I want to thank you for joining us again this evening. You inspire me to be here every Wednesday night to share this information with you. I also just want to thank you for all you do on behalf of our Jewish brethren and for the state of Israel. And God watches, He sees, and one day you are going to stand before Him at the great white throne as He opens up the book, and these accounts and your involvement in defending the apple of His eye is going to be duly noted. And I know He's going to be well pleased with His servant. So I hope that you'll plan to tune in with us next week. And of course, as always, we'll be right here at PJTN Online. So thank you so much for joining us. God bless you. And we'll look forward to seeing you next week at PJTN Online. God bless.
To support this program, send your tax-deductible gift to Proclaiming Justice to the Nations, P.O. Box 682711, Franklin, Tennessee 37068. You can also support PJTN online. Visit pjtn.org or call 1-877-873-9020.
Anti-Semitism has reached epic proportions, and Israel is now surrounded by nations who seek its destruction. For Israel to lose just one battle would mean losing everything. As Christians, it is our biblical responsibility to stand with our Jewish brethren and Israel. PJTN needs your help to reach more Christians with this urgent message. Please visit our website to become a member today and order our award-winning documentaries. You must decide that you won't be silent. Sign up now at pjtn.org. God bless you, and thank you for your support and prayers.